We now have another technocrat, another bureaucrat in the house. We have Shri Radheshyam Mopalwar. He was still recently the part of the MSRDC. He was the managing director and the vice chairman, and he's played a very, very important role in executing a lot of key investment projects, infrastructure projects in Maharashtra. He was the Director General of the War Room in the Chief Minister's office. Again, until very recently, the War Room was to push a lot of infrastructure projects in the state and to ensure that there's a seamless cohesion between the government and these projects coming up. Mopalwar was handpicked by the state leadership to head the War Room, and is widely viewed as a very, very seasoned and reliable bureaucrat to realize the Maharashtra's infrastructure goals and, of course, the process of becoming the first ever state to become a $1 trillion economy. So let's please give himself a lot of applause and welcome him to the stage. Mopalwar. And he'll be joined in a discussion with Yogini Deshmukh. Dr. Deshmukh, please come to the stage.
Good afternoon. For the afternoon session, we have Shri Mopalwar ji. Welcome to the session, sir. India's infrastructure development has certain unique challenges compared to most parts of the world, specifically given in the morning we've seen some sessions where you're dealing with different sections of the society within a few kilometers of distance. Some even say we should reconcile to paying a democratic penalty for infrastructure delays because of these various challenges. Can you provide us some valuable insights, at least some 3-4 factors, on taking up these delays and not call it as a wicked problem? How do you would solve this general pessimism that's there towards infrastructure development?
Thank you, Yogini ji. First of all, we must understand there is no such thing as democratic penalty or democratic charge. You see, development is a new phenomenon for us, especially big infrastructure. So we find there are a lot of protests, lot of opposition, and we think that opposition is stopping the projects. In fact, we have to think something otherwise. If you look at the projects all across the world, in fact, way back, 20 years before, I had an occasion to be trained in Denver, Colorado. We had 15 days training. And it is very difficult, even in America, to take up major projects. They have something called now grandfather rights. When we are talking about fishermen rights, and we are talking about tribal rights, and we feel these are major issues. These are major issues because we are doing major projects now. We don't realize that when major projects were done earlier, now for example, we have Bandra-Warsaw ceiling. We had done Bandra-Worli ceiling. Now we did 30 years before the Thane Creek Bridge. But way back in 1927, we had Mahul Creek Fishermen Rehabilitation Act. So this element of human care, unless that is there in the major infrastructure project, we always will feel that there is no obstruction. If we mainstream that, see for example MTHL is there. You are going to international organization and JICA would insist that all environmental and social issues should be tackled first. Then we will actually take a decision on funding. So if 1927 we could take care of the Mahul Creek, because the power plant was coming there, thermal power plant was coming there, and people had apprehensions about their livelihood being adversely affected, and an act was made. So when we took up this Thane Creek Bridge, people had gone in writ to High Court, and we were discussing whether that is an obstruction. I said that's not an obstruction. If you are spending 1,000 crores on the infrastructure project, spending 10 crores on actually mitigating the hardship faced by 200 families is not a big deal. But we feel that it's big. It's not. So if we actually mainstream a thinking that we will take care of all the social and environmental issues before we take up the infrastructure execution, then we will not have this feeling. Look at example this tribal. We are going through tribal land. We need to actually, because that is the only livelihood. If we are actually taking away their livelihood, and okay, development will come, but how they will not be a beneficiary of development directly. Express is going, railway line is going, and their habitations are shifted, they're divided. So we must be very, very careful that when we mainstream or when we go for the execution of project, see, for example, Samruddhi Mahama, what we did, before we could float tenders, we had every other clearance. We had wildlife clearance, we had forest clearance, land acquisition, land was in possession. And what was the key there? That was the communication. If you communicate with society, community, I think these issues are sorted out and we will not feel that there is a delay.
Basically, you're saying that infrastructure projects should have an inclusive development in itself. So, in this inclusive development, there have been several protests from the local communities also. How do you think they can be addressed in the future as we move into different for each of these projects?
As I said, addressing these issues should be the mainstream. When we actually take up the project, the first thing should be mapping the social and ecological issues. If you map them, if you address them, then there are no protests. There will be some protests, but that will be discussion, that will be communication, that you actually start handholding people, explaining what exactly you are doing, how it is going to adversely affect them, to what extent, and how you are going to mitigate. See, we have to ensure that the people being affected must be benefited. Their life must be better than what they are now living. We assured in Samruddhi that everybody who is getting affected will be better. In fact, he will have better future, he will have better financial returns. Once he surrenders land here, he will actually, what happened in Samruddhi, if they were surrendering 2 acres of land, they purchased 5 acres of land and still they were left with savings. So if they are better, if their life is bettered, then they will certainly be on board.
Till recently, you were the Director General of the Maharashtra Infrastructure War Room that directly works under the oversight of the Chief Minister, Shri Eknath Shinde, to expedite infrastructure projects in the state. We understand it was dramatically accelerated many projects in the state, especially long languishing ones like the Mumbai Coastal Road. The MTHL was also completed in time, multiple lines of metro in Mumbai, etc. So can you share some insights on the effectiveness of the war room models for expediting the future infrastructure projects?
This is very important question. In fact, see, when you take up infrastructure, for example, Metro in Mumbai. Metro in Mumbai requires cooperation by 17 agencies, 17. So if you feel it is only MMRDA or MMRCL which will go ahead and construct that metro rail and then trials will be there, it doesn't happen. You'll require traffic police, you'll require order police, you'll require MSRDC. Now people don't know that MSRDC is a major player when it comes to metro. And our complete involvement in facilitating their flawless execution is extremely important because we have bridges. These bridges were constructed by us and metro lines are crisscrossing them. They will have drilling where we have a foundation. You have then utilities, you have underground sewerage, you have underground water lines. Now water line engineering is different, sewerage engineering is different. So all those issues, it's very difficult for any project proponent to go ahead and execute unless there is a top level intervention. It is not only one, metro is one example. Now for example, there is a private project. If we are, there is one project called Bhendi Bazar rehabilitation project. Now, Bhendi Bazar project, even if it was a private project, it required an intervention from top level. One simple example I am giving. Now, Bhendi Bazar was redeveloping the chawls or the multi-story buildings which were constructed in 30s. The area was between 120 square feet for every tenement to 180 square feet and a palatial tenement to 300 square feet, that kind of thing, those houses were there. Now, when you are actually, it starts with the development control regulations being amended. Now, if you say the Bhendi Bazar project proponents will go to municipality, then submit an application, we want these changes, then municipal corporation will take a resolution in the general body, then make a notification, then seek objections and suggestions, deliberate upon that, send it to government, government will again examine it, send it to director of. There are at least 20 stages for one issue. Second issue was when these buildings were there, there was something called house gullies. Between two buildings, there were certain lanes. And that was no man's land. That was neither owned by the building owner or nor by anybody. It was not even municipal corporation which was owner of that. So who is the owner? And when you have a new development, what is the status of such land? Whether they are going to be merged, if they are going to be merged with the larger plot, whether FSI on that to be given. If FSI is to be given, whether commercial exploitation should be allowed. Now these decisions cannot be taken by undersecretaries, deputy secretaries, secretaries, then commissioners. This doesn't happen even on municipal corporators or this is standing committee or the improvements committee. These people, nobody has that final. That authority comes when this war room concept came, it said the minutes of the war room shall be at par with government order. So, and in that war room, apart from the CM and Deputy CM, you had Chief Secretary and Secretaries or Additional Chief Secretaries of each department. So, suppose in case of Bhandibada, the Revenue Department will come with the issue of house building. Now, the Undersecretary there would simply write, this is not possible. Now, if it is not possible, it will go to Law Department. Law Department will say, the Additional Department has not said anything. They have said not possible, legally it is correct, and it will send. The decision in the war room will be that this plot shall be merged with the rest of the plot, this benefit shall be given. So, when every secretary is there, it is not, so if the projects are to be fast tracked, whether it's Metro, whether it's Bhandibada, whether it's Samruddhi, or you go to, for example, river linking, everywhere multi-departmental cooperation, that are their issues cannot be sorted out on this level. They need to be sorted at the top political level, and that is where war room becomes the most effective instrument. But for war room, Metro would not have been possible. But for war room, MTHL would not have been possible. But for war room, Samruddhi would not also have been possible.
So, has sort of a little bit out of the syllabus question, has any state decided to utilize this similar system in their other than Mumbai, so or other than Maharashtra?
See, I saw this model, I think in Andhra Pradesh, because I had gone there in 99. And the way CM Secretary, but it was not a war room, it was CM Secretary and CM himself taking the interview. Like here, the CM will sit in the war room and take a decision. Their CM is to take, but it was not called war room. And they had one typical program called MNP, the Minimum Needs Program. There are 27,000 villages. And they said, what are the top 10 demands of each village? So 270,000 demands from the villages were monitored by the CM directly. So that's what I'd say. But this transformational activity, for example, Malaysia, that was in the Prime Minister's office.
Okay.
So wherever it is there, it has got to be at the top level. Now, Government of India has taken this PMG, Prime Minister's Gati Shakti program.
Yes.
That is monitored by the Prime Minister himself. And before Prime Minister takes the meeting, it's the Cabinet Secretary who actually, or Secretary Coordination, the Cabinet Secretary, he actually speaks to all the Chief Secretaries. What is the status of the various issues, or resolution of various issues? And the Prime Minister himself takes the meeting. That works.
Okay. Coming to the finance aspects, Maharashtra's innate strength as India's economic engine provides it with a certain level of financial depth to fund infrastructure projects. But given spiraling land acquisition costs and the funding of the infrastructure projects across states can be a challenging issue. So what do you think we should be doing from a policy perspective for the land acquisition? Do you think we need any changes?
See, now you are riding a tiger. You told people that you will give 4 times or 5 times of the market value. I don't think you can ever go back. It has a different effect. I gave some presentations and gave some data to them. But earlier, the cost of land acquisition used to amount to 2 to 3% of the total project cost. I spoke to a new bank, this NAFID, the National Bank for Infrastructure Financing, which has been created. Earlier, the land acquisition cost, which was 2-3%, was fine. State used to take care. Now it is 20%. In some projects, it is 50%. Now, multimodal corridor, that from Virat to Alibag that we are going to construct, when it was conceived in 2008 and 2010, the land acquisition cost was 2,500. Come 2013, on 1st of January 2014, the land acquisition cost is 4 times because the Act said it is 4 times. So 2,500 by one instrument becomes 10,000 crores. And from 2013 to 2023, the cost of acquisition of land has skyrocketed 23,000 crores out of 50,000 crores of the project cost. So earlier, which was at that time, because this is a metropolitan land or MMR region, so it's costly. So earlier, this cost was 15 to 20% in MMR. It has gone to beyond or up to 50% and may go back. So this, as I said in opening statement, riding a tiger. I don't think you can go back. You can be very, very calibrated. You should not be splurging. You need to factor this. See, in all the user fee-based projects, like in toll road projects, land acquisition cost was never factored. The mitigation is now in toll road projects, the toll tenure will have to be fixed with reference to the cost of land acquisition, which is by making it part of the project. Earlier, land acquisition cost was not part of the project for cost recovery. So, cost recovery issue will have to be actually taking into account land acquisition cost.
Mumbai is going through its biggest infrastructure upgrade with ongoing construction of multiple metro lines. MTHL has just finished, Coastal Road, sea links, etc. But this also means a lot of traffic diversions, longer commute times. Some projects also tend to get delayed for multiple reasons. There's overall, and which creates an overall angst amongst the commuters and the people. So, what do you think is the best way to communicate to the general people the importance of the infrastructure projects, given that payoffs are seen at a much later date?
See, the biggest challenge is we as a governmental body, whether it is municipal commissioners, tax system, government, or the PWD engineers, we need to be more compliant with the security. Somehow, why people feel so much of anguish or they face trouble? Because our implementation does not take into account the mitigation measures for the trouble that people face or the inconvenience that people face. Now it is High Court which had to intervene, saying that the dust menace because of the construction which is going on in Bombay needs to be tackled. And now the municipal commissioner issued an order whereby every construction, now they have those green jalis which are coming at, but that High Court had to intervene. It is, we need to be sensitive as an administration that every best practice that is enumerated in the book for protection of environment, for avoiding inconvenience must be. See, there are adequate provisions in the book saying that so that people will be inconvenienced the least. That needs to be implemented to the last T. Simple.
India is again in the middle of its greatest infrastructure upgrade. To successfully execute this, we need serious state capacities in managing projects. And I think earlier Mr. Raman Kapila was talking about that in terms of how private agencies are not finding engineers. As an accomplished bureaucrat who has delivered on several infrastructure projects, does the state capacity have the requisite apparatus for future bureaucrats and future engineers? How do you think they should be developing that capacity, if not this?
Yes, like in earlier session from Tata Projects, you say there is severe issue on the capacity, especially on the engineering, management, finance. You simply don't find people who will go on the cash flows, who will understand the cash flows, who will raise finance, who will actually deploy various instruments to it's an issue, and especially the kind of explosion we find. And next 3 decades, as we see, India will be completely different growth trajectory. Nothing will stay back. Whatever is the government, the growth will not stop. The activity will not stop. Infrastructure will, the activity on infrastructure front is going to continuously grow. You will require people to be trained. Yes, in government also we will require to build capacities. We will require to see to that officers who are showing inclination for infrastructure and timely delivery. They need to be encouraged. Engineers need to be trained. Because, for example, engineers by and large, they are used to smaller 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, smaller projects, a building of 20 crores or 10 crores. When we are saying now 10 lakh square feet building is to be constructed, a new auditorium is constructed, new cities are going to be city plan. Because, like for example, 50 years before CIDCO came as city plan, MMRDA came as. So in city planning, we have adequate resources. See, in infrastructure and reality, but reality has, very interesting. In private sector, in reality sector, you have a reasonable amount of people, number of people that they are available. But when it comes to infrastructure, yes, we are facing shortage, and that can be augmented only by further training, hand-holding, and actually empowering them more.
Sort of a personal question. You've had a very long career and you still continue to work. Where does this motivation come from? What inspires you to continue into the infrastructure field and continue to give advice to it?
Somehow, I think it was good fortune that right from the first posting, in the 40 years of my service, 20 years I got assignments which were actually infrastructure and technology related, which is something rare. Otherwise, in IAS, one would be commissioner for a long time, collector for a long time, secretary for a long time. I never worked as secretary in government, but on the field continuously. So that might have given an opportunity for me to grow more fond of this field and deliver it or develop a mindset whereby I decide a time frame for myself. If it is to be 3 years, then I would say, no, it should be done in 30 months. So that's how one gets motivated over a period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for an enlightening session. I now open the floor for any questions.
What's the biggest complexity currently in executing large infrastructure projects? Where is the biggest challenge at this point?
Biggest challenge is only land acquisition. There is no other challenge. There is no finance is not a challenge. Administration is not a challenge. Contractors is not a challenge. The challenge is going to be taking people on board, acquiring land in time, and executing.
Does the financing requirement as well as the viability of the project get impacted because of land acquisition costs going up so significantly higher?
Yes, I explained because the component of the cost of land acquisition of an project has gone up from 2 to 3% to 20%. Normally, 20, 30%. And closer to the cities, it is almost 50%. So that's why I said the second part is when the viability is from the point of cost recovery. If the land acquisition cost is met as a part of the total project cost, then the cost recovery will take into account that. So that won't happen.
This regarding land acquisition for payment of compensation, is there any thought of paying at least part of the compensation through bonds in the future?
See, government will be very happy to do that. People have to accept it. See, initially we started with participatory kind of thing. We tried that. We said let them be partners. But people do not trust that in long term they are going to be benefited. Bonds is a future promise. Like we did in case of Krishna Kore 24 years before. We went ahead with bonds at that point of time. But bonds were actually issued to raise funds, not to be used. Finally, when contractors' payments were stuck, then bonds were, we issued them. The bonds in the form of promissory notes were issued. But for land acquisition, see how many people were there, for example, in Samruddhi, in 700 kilometers. We had 22,000 families and 300,000 people. How do you talk to 300,000 people that, okay, out of your 20 lakh, 5 lakh will be the bond? They won't trust it. See, it will be again yield and discounting. Basically, now 5 lakh becomes 4.5 lakh, the government is cheating me about 50,000. So the government should independently raise funds by issuing bonds and pay directly to the people. Thank you.
Thank you.
A big round of applause for Mr. Mopalwar. We've had a really wide range of speakers from the beginning, from Mr. Chauhan to bureaucrats, technocrats, corporate honchos, and now we'll soon have